is getting out of control. You know, we need to take care of it. Do you need help? What do you need us to do? But it's hard to explain to a coach while somebody in the middle of the field threw a UNS on him when there was a wing right there that didn't flag it. So we need to try to work together with that and help our wings out. You know, younger officials are going to be on the sidelines, newer officials. Help them. Help them be confident. Let them throw that flag, and we'll have their back. Being flagged by somebody 30, 40 yards away is kind of perceived as an official looking to throw flags or possibly having rabbit ears. So we don't want to be those people and just let our wings take care of their sidelines. Now, there are times, and I'm talking about an official in the middle of the field. I'm not talking about going into the sidelines with players of opposing colors and something happens. Yes, there's all kinds of situations where flags are warranted. I'm talking about from the middle of the field, throwing on a coach in the sidelines. So with that said, game reports, we're going to be filling out game reports. UNS fouls need a better explanation. I would like to know who and why they threw. UNS number 25 blue team is an unacceptable game report. I would like to know the back judge called a UNS on a coach of Team X for calling him a dumbass. The wing on that sideline said he didn't hear the coach say anything, or the wing heard the coach, but saw the back judge's flag, so he didn't throw, or the wing heard it, but the coach has been on the wing all night and didn't want to feel the fire. This gives everybody an opportunity to improve as a crew and the state by hearing about these situations and how we can handle them better. So with that said, I will turn it over to Kirk.
Thanks, Matt. All right, I get to talk about aiding or helping the runner, assisting the runner. I think we've used all those terms. Let me see if I'm going to do this right, Joel. Tell me if you see. Let's go here.
Yep, I got your presentation, Kirk.
All right, so we're going to talk about helping the runner. Click. Okay, the rule book says, it's pretty simple rule. An offensive player shall not push, pull, or lift the runner to assist his forward progress. Penalty is a 5-yard penalty. It seems fairly simple, and I'm going to make this statement that we don't want to go looking for this foul. However, because it's a point of emphasis this year, I think it's important for us to go through some film, and I've got way too many film clips to watch, so I tried to summarize it in some PowerPoints right here, and then we'll watch a little bit of film and see if we can improve on getting the fouls on this that we want caught every time. This is the point of emphasis as written in the rules book. I want to make this statement. I do not read every rule of the rules book, but I did go search this out since it was a point of emphasis, and we were going to talk about it tonight.
Kirk, we lost your presentation. If you're sharing, it disappeared.
How about that? Is that back?
Now you got it.
Okay, so in that rules book point of emphasis, it says football game officials need to change their view of helping the runner. And we're going to refocus on either ending the play when forward progress is stopped. However, pushing the pile is legal. Emphasis on legal. Pushing the pile is legal. Direct contact with pushing, pulling, lifting of the runner is not. And so I want to show you a quick, and this will cycle through. Hopefully it's coming through smooth. The thing that I think we miss a fair bit in the game is a designed push by a back. And I've got some plays here that this particular back helps us out by his big white goofy gloves that he's got on, giving that quarterback a push. And we can imagine the situations that a team would either by design or a back thinking that he was going to help himself out by pushing his quarterback forward. This is a lot to view from the referee position. The wings sometimes get screened from this action, but this is a foul we want to catch. It is a back pushing the runner. There's no doubt this back made contact with the runner, and the runner's back assisting or helping the runner move this pile forward. And again, many times this is on 4th and short, 3rd and short in negative territory, or many times when there's a money line, including the goal line in short, any of those short yardage. Here is an example of pulling the runner. And I don't think we miss these. I think these are so obvious to us. They're wide open in the field. This should cycle back through. We get a lineman pulling the jersey of his running back, pulling it forward. Again, we're probably going to see this. Keep in mind, we have an option to rule forward progress is stopped. In this case, I think it's going to be hard to call this forward progress. We'd want to catch this as helping the runner, 5-yard penalty.
Hey, Kirk, so a couple comments coming in from Mike Kelly says we should be using the phrase illegal helping the runner. And then a question from Dennis is on that first video you had, so it looks like they're kind of dominating that line of scrimmage. Is that push really impacting the play? So the question is, if it's not really impacting a play, can we tell that at all, or does that change how we're going to call it?
And there are several plays that I have in my list that I struggled with that very question. I think the way I think we can deal with this, if we address it when it looks so blatantly obvious that it's almost designed by the back or the coaching staff, I think we've got to nip that in the bud, whether that progress was achieved with the push or not. The problem is you're going to let it go on 1 down. They're going to do it 4 downs later, and he's going to be stopped, and then you're going to call the aiding the runner. I believe we've got to get this caught. It's a back that's pushing directly in the back. It follows in the rule book as a foul, and I believe we need to call this.
All right, one last question.
There are plenty marginals, though.
One last question coming in. Is this a live ball from foul from the spot of the foul, or is this from succeeding spot?
We should have a flag at the spot of the foul if it's beyond the line of scrimmage. If it's behind the line of scrimmage, now we're going to take that to the line of scrimmage.
So would you say that's where the contact is made? So if that contact is made with the runner, that's where the foul is?
Probably, yeah. Probably where the assistance of that back started.
Gotcha.
So here is, and again, I'm pulling a little clip here to run it through. Might be a little grainy, but you can see a lifting of the runner. Keep cycling through, and there's actually a longer play of this, but I'm just wanting to show the lifting that we see, lifting or carrying. And in this case, his fellow player is keeping him on his feet. He's lifting him up, helping him to continue forward. And so as soon as that is noticed as him helping the runner, that's where the flag would be in this case. In this case, it's beyond the line of scrimmage, spot foul. All right, here's that same statement. Pushing the pile is legal, but direct contact and pushing, pulling, lifting of the runner is not. One thing that I want to point out, that if you see a player do what the referee signal looks like, we don't need to flag that one. I don't believe that's going to aid any runner with that kind of bump. If anything, we should probably tell the assistant to keep his hands to himself. The other reason not to look for this foul is we kind of make our white hats look a little bit foolish with this signal. So with that, trying to be funny there, didn't hear anybody laugh.
I remember they're all muted.
I'm sure, oh, that's true. All right. All right, now I'm going to, all right, Joel, I forgot to share. Is this sharing the screen now?
Yep, you're good.
And you're looking at a full screen of a huddle play?
No, I'm looking at your PowerPoint presentation.
Okay. Then I need to.
And you were at the 10-minute mark, by the way.
Thank you. All right, we're going to share huddle. And I've asked Joel to make sure he lets me know when we get to the 18, 19-minute mark. All right, so here's another play where it's similar to the question that was asked. Let me know, Joel, are you looking at a full-size play?
Yep, you're good.
All right, here's another situation where you see the backs, big white gloves. This actually is the same team going the other direction. They come up. It's It's not actually a money line situation, but you can see the intent of the back is to just push the quarterback forward. We take care of this now. We don't have to deal with it on 4th and short because it's apparent that this is by design. Okay, this play, it's 3rd and short. Is it smooth, Joel, or is it pretty choppy?
No, it's decent. It's much
Okay.
better than it was in the practice session.
All right, I'm going to back this one up. All right, we do know it's 3rd and short, and I want to focus on, can you see my cursor, Joel, move?
Yes.
Okay, this back right here, the near back, watch what he does. Oh, I'm sorry, it's the far back, not the near one. So we'll back this up. So the far back, you see how he reaches around the body, lifting the quarterback? Definitely a foul, not only lifting, but pushing forward. We need to catch this. We got to go back 5 yards. That is helping that runner gain yardage. Although in this case, I suppose the coach could decline the penalty, although they are referencing 1st down, so I guess he did get the line to gain. We want a foul on this one. Now, what I want to point out here, so this is the red team going from right to left. I think this pushing the runner foul, if we're going to get it called, it is likely needing the assistance from the referee. This is not all wing. It's hard to tell, I think, from the wing through the bodies that are in front of the wing what actually is happening. So when we're looking at a push, and so I think the comment earlier is this enough to make any difference? I can't tell if he even hit the quarterback with his push. Kind of looks like he does, but the referee is really the only one that's going to get a good look at whether this helping the runner exists. Again, the referee has the best look at this. There's a big scrum. It's hard to tell if hands actually got onto the back of the quarterback. I would probably leave this one alone. It's just, we don't want to go looking for the foul. And when in doubt, I believe our mechanics manual makes it clear, when in doubt in this case, it is not helping the runner. This one is a very grainy photo. Actually, I need to take it back for a more grainy image here. But in essence, what we're going to see is the runner, what appears to get across the goal line, and now there's a big push of a pile. Again, pushing the pile is not a foul. Pushing the runner is. We have a wing going up with a signal, and the referee says, no, I've got helping the runner on the play. And so we're going to wipe off a touchdown in this case. I think it's got to be pretty obvious to remove this score. So somebody's got to have a blatantly obvious push or a carry or a pull or a lift if you're going to overturn that touchdown. But that referee may have the best view. Now we're getting into some questionable stuff. You see a lot of our troubles with this at the goal line. This is another case where money line exists. Quarterback moves to the line of scrimmage, turns his back, and the running back gives him a shove into the end zone. What do you have got there on his own? It's hard to tell. A lot of judgment call here. If we had time to do a poll, I'd probably throw it in here and see who would have helping the runner and who would leave that alone. I think my reaction would be to leave that alone. It did not look intentional from the snap. Oh, maybe it did. I don't know. You'd have to make that call and stick to it. So here's a case where we see this a lot in high school football, where there's just a lot of bodies flying around. A lot of legs are still moving. Tacklers are trying to tackle. I'll have a sideline view of this as well. You may or may not have had some assistance by a lineman here, but it's the feet are still moving, and there's just not an obvious foul that exists. So I would tend to leave this alone. Not enough to call it. I don't see the lineman reaching around grabbing the runner's body, which is a dead giveaway for this foul. This is the same play. Tacklers are tackling, blockers are continuing to block bodies. Nothing that looked blatantly obvious as a foul. Again, don't go looking for it. Make sure it shows up. Here's a case where looks like the quarterback could have easily got the yardage. I don't even know if there was enough contact by the back to make any difference. Looks like everything's moving forward at the same speed the back is moving.
So Kirk, just a question that came in. When you've got a wall of humanity like that, who's really going to have the best look at that? Is that going to be the R? Is that going to be the wings? Is that going to be the U?
I think in this situation where you've got this quarterback in the middle of a bunch of bodies, the wings have no chance to see this. I think the umpire is limited. Keep in mind, the referee's got progress to the line of scrimmage. So within those first couple steps, it's really the referee watching the snap, the back end of the snap, the handoff. So I'd say this is R until it gets into the open field.
And there's some folks agreeing with you. So
here's actually, this might be a repeat. Here's that wrap around to lift to the quarterback forward. And we didn't get this foul. I don't know where this film came from, but it did not get called, and they actually gave him the first down. This is one we absolutely want to get called. This is a foul. When that running back wraps his arms around the quarterback and helps lift him forward. One more time here. Here's one where we're going to see a pull. This is that obvious stuff. Lifting up and pulling. He gets both of those, lift and pull. I don't believe you can stop this with a forward progress. Things just continue to move forward, and we've got a helping the runner foul. Flag should come out. A lot of helping the runner back when we wore knickers, Joel. I don't know. Maybe we were better at this rule back then. Either that or we were helping more.
Another comment just came into there's so many people in the middle of the pile. It's going to be hard to sort out who's doing what, especially at real time speed, right? Because we're looking at film.
Absolutely.
Can I jump in here real quick?
Please.
Yeah, sure.
These fouls happen, they're going to jump out at you and be like, whoa, does not look right. So if that happens, flag it. If it's questionable, leave it alone.
And so John asked the question, says, how will we be supported with this flag? John, if you could elaborate a little more on that in the chat window.
So this play, we've got the black jersey team, again, kind of a mass of bodies. It's hard to tell if there was an obvious foul. If we use that statement, make sure it jumps out at you. If you see number 55 here actually wrap him up and try to carry him, then absolutely, that would jump out at you. That should be a foul. In this case, it just was not obvious to me.
And so that's kind of along the lines with what came in the chat window just now. Actually, Scott Lewis mentioned that we don't have a true philosophy on this, but when in doubt, the player did not illegally assist the runner. So are you good with that?
Yep. Philosophy. I like Matt's comment. If it doesn't jump out at you, it's not a foul.
All right. And you're 17 minutes right now, Kirk.
I think I've probably talked enough. We're going to start getting into some grainy. A lot of NFL film. I guess this was a 15-yard penalty back in the day in the NFL. Another grainy picture. We got help here, trying to help it forward. I think in this case, get it back farther here. In this case, I think we could probably just say the progress was stopped and leave it alone. The things kind of stalled out about right in that area anyway. We probably could just say that the play was over. The foul didn't change anything. I do have some clips, and I don't think I've got time to show them. Let me see if I can get one of them in here. No, I think that's so. I think my ending comment here is it gets a little bit tricky at the goal line when we have a money line at the goal line. We might see something that appears to be a pull into the end zone or a lift into the end zone when in fact the ball had already crossed the goal line. And so now that communication, your referee might say, yeah, he was lifting that runner into the end zone. The wings could say, you know what, that ball was in the end zone, or, we saw the lift and it happened after the fact. So we've got to be able to rule on the ball crossing the goal line without the helping assistance from another player. So with that, I'll move off the screen.
And you were right on time, 19 minutes, 30 seconds. Good job, Kurt. All right, I believe Craig is up next, correct?
I believe that's true. Good evening, everybody. So I'm going to have a little talk tonight about disqualifications. So obviously during the Master Clinic, you had some good discussions from the president about controlling your sideline and things like that. And I'm going to consider this more of a continuation of that, talking about ejections and disqualifications. I'm not going to spend much time on how we're going to act towards coaches or towards sidelines. Here's some stats for you for the 2022 football season. We had 125 player disqualifications. You can see the breakdown. 54% were fighting. Probably not real surprising. Now, obviously, the unsportsmanlike conduct times 2, that is a rule, obviously, but there's underlying unsporting conduct within that. This is just the way John keeps track of the fouls as he reads the game reports. So that came in number 2 when someone had multiple fouls, multiple unsportsmanlike, and then you see the flagrant fouls, racial comments, and then other. We had some coaches tossed as well. Verbal abuse, again, not surprised that that's one of the top ones. Then multiple unsporting conduct, 1 contacting official. So 14 coach disqualifications. And our disqualifications included regular season as well as postseason.
I'm just wondering on the fighting one, Craig, who was the coach fighting with?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't remember reading that game report, to be honest with you. It's a good question. So what happens with the disqualification? I think we all know that, but just a reminder, the player is disqualified for the remainder of that game, and then he sits out the next game as well. The player does not have to leave the sideline area. So just to be clear on that, we don't expect the coach to send the player off. Can you imagine a visiting school telling the kid go find a place to hang out until the end of the game? So player does not have to leave the sideline. If he continues to get mouthy on the sideline, though, that's something the coach needs to deal with. If he's disqualified and continues to communicate with the officials in any way.
Hey, Craig, can I ask a question real quick?
Yes.
So when we were talking to a coach or anything, do we tell them that, hey, if we kick this kid out, he's going to be gone this game and next game? Do we actually say that?
I don't think we tell what the punishment is. I mean, we
don't want to give any kind of indication of what's going to happen with that player. That's between CHSAA and the school.
And on that point, it's important to remember too, it's not our job to police the sidelines, game to game. If a coach comes up and says, hey, look over there, 24, he was ejected last week and he shouldn't be playing. That's not our job to officiate that. It's not our job. We don't get the game reports, and we don't get the CHSAA reports that tell us everyone who's been disqualified around the state each week. So that's something that school, if they know that to be a fact, then they would report that to CHSAA and let CHSAA deal with it. So correct. Now, if a coach is disqualified, same thing for the remainder of that game, and then the whole next game. Plus, coaches, I believe, get to take a visit to CHSAA and have a discussion about their disqualification. But the big difference here is the coach may not have any contact with the team, direct or indirect, during the remainder of the game. They're gone and they need to leave the area of the field. So if you see coaches still on the sideline, then you'd remind them they need to leave.
So, Craig, I just have a question around that. I mean, once in my time on the field, I had a coach that refused to leave. So do you suspend the game at that point? Do you give them a certain amount of time to leave and tell them if you don't leave, it's a forfeit? Just kind of how do you handle it if a coach says, I'm not leaving?
Rulebook actually says if the coach refused to leave, then the game could be forfeited. So one of those situations that the referee has some authorities.
All right, good to know.
Now, here's a good to know too. I think it was just within the last year or two, someone tried to disqualify a superintendent or something like that. That seems to come to mind. So anyone subject to the rules, anyone non-player on the sidelines can be ejected. But there are some exceptions there, as you can see. Athletic directors can't really throw them out. Principals and superintendents, trainers for obvious reasons, in case someone gets hurt. But as the rule said, I mean, as our mechanics manual says, put that in the game report. And that again, that's something that we want to bring to Chasta's attention if those people are acting in an unsporting manner. So some fouls which result in disqualifications. Right off the bat, we all know this one. And these are personal fouls. We know we have the unsportsmanlike conduct fouls and the personal fouls, which we generally classify as contact fouls versus non-contact fouls, although that's not absolute rule, but that's generally the rule. Fighting, intentionally contacting an official. We did see one of those in last year's disqualifications. Any of the 9-4 rules, and I'm not going to list them all here. You have your rule books probably in front of you. Deemed to be flagrant. We'll talk about flagrant in a second. Unintentional contact with an official in the restricted zone. In other words, during live ball action, the second offense results in disqualification of the head coach. And there's been a little bit of confusion about this in the past. This is not an unsportsmanlike foul. Very similar in that 2 fouls result in a disqualification. But it's not an unsportsmanlike, and that's particularly important if you run into the head coach in the first quarter and then the head coach lips off to you in the third quarter and you throw an unsportsmanlike conduct. We don't combine that personal foul with that unsportsmanlike foul and then disqualify the coach from the game. Completely separate things here. But just to keep in mind, unintentional contact with official in restricted zone by anybody, any non-player, times 2 equals disqualification of the head coach. Illegal helmet contact. The reason I'm putting this here is because it's one of those things where the rule book actually gives specific examples where you don't have to necessarily use your judgment so much on what's considered to be a flagrant foul. And now my slides aren't moving. There we go. Illegal contact against an opponent lying on the ground, illegal helmet contact against a player being held up by other players, and illegal helmet contact against a defensive player. Those are pretty common sense. If you're coming in with your helmet on any of those occasions, you got a flagrant foul. Here's the 9-5 non-contact by players, unsportsmanlike contact now. Any violation under that rule deemed to be flagrant. So can you have a flagrant comment? I guess the answer is yes. Obviously, a second occurrence. And just to be clear too, fouls which result in DQ, that's a little bit misleading on my labeling there. Any of these fouls individually are not disqualifications. My point is these are the fouls that times 2 could result in a disqualification. This is emphasized every year. The use of the N-word by any player towards an opponent or an official will disqualify the player who's using that language. It's not our job, and I know there's controversy about it. Does it end in an A or an ER? It's not our job to figure that out. Rule is we hear that word, the N-word, being used towards an opponent or official or coach, opposing coach. That's an immediate disqualification. If they use it towards teammates, which they tend to, you'll hear that sometimes as well. That's still a flag, but it's not an automatic disqualification. Non-contact, unsportsmanlike again, but this time by non-players, very similar. A substitute leaving the team box during a fight. Obviously, that doesn't mean leaving the team box and going back and his girlfriend in the stands. That means joining the fight. That's a disqualification right off the bat. Any of the 9-8 fouls deemed to be flagrant again. second one of any of those. And same thing, even a non-player using that word against an opponent, same result. There's a definition of the NFHS gives of a flagrant foul. We didn't have obviously a lot of those disqualifications. Now there was, and it was just a conversation we're having with Chassa, John, about which kind of fouls, require the most judgment, which kind of fouls are pretty obvious to us. There's probably several fouls in all of these categories that require a little bit of judgment, whether or not they would, result in a unsportsmanlike flag or not. I mean, any delay or excessive prolonged, these are the non-contact physical acts. This one's interesting to me, kicking the ball other than during a legal kick. And I never really paid attention to that before, but that rule's probably poorly written. Kicking the ball other than during a legal kick. Well, during live ball action, kicking the ball is also a foul, and that's not a legal kick. Just a maybe a comment for the rules committee, George. That's leaving the field between downs to gain advantage. I've never heard of that one being thrown. I don't know if we can actually determine whether someone thinks they're getting advantage or if they're just a confused high school football player leaving the field. Refusing to comply with the game official's request, that never happens. I'm not sure I've seen many flags thrown on that either. So again, the judgment there, I think the judgment most officials use, or some of these aren't probably worth throwing flags for, even though they are on the books. It's probably happened. Outside the team box, but not on the field, is actually an unsportsmanlike conduct foul. Oh, these were pretty obvious, pretty straightforward. A kid spikes the ball, kid kicks the ball because he's mad, throws it high into the air. I've never seen him throw it into the stadium. Intentionally failed to place it on the ground or immediately return to a game official. Again, I think most officials don't choose to flag that in a sporting way unless it's. I've seen delay of game potentially on that, but that is an unsporting foul. Again, the things that we see every game and choose to not flag. Holding an unauthorized conference, I guess we usually tell people that you can't hold that conference. Again, using a racial slur. How can you determine if a foul's just a personal foul or it's a flagrant foul? This is one that's going to take some, judgment on our part when we actually see it happen. There's in law, you'll see the word, if you watch TV, watch law shows on TV, reasonable, the word reasonable. It's actually a legal standard in the federal and state courts. It's reasonable person standards, reasonable suspicion. You've heard the term beyond reasonable doubt, use of reasonable force. And this is just my thoughts on it. Use the same standard for whether or not an act is flagrant. If a reasonable person, and we all consider ourselves to be reasonable people, would view the contact as excessive or unnecessary, then it probably is flagrant. If you look at one of those fouls and you think, yeah, that was totally unnecessary, or sometimes they're just and your first instinct is to grab for that angry flag, and you hear the whole stands erupt in oohs and ahs. It's probably just that obvious. And before we call a foul flagrant, it probably needs to be fairly obvious.
Hey, Craig, so I want to ask you a question around this. Just say you've got a big hit and the player pops back up and no issues at all, but that same hit, the player's injured. Does it make a difference if the player stays down or if there's any kind of injury in the play?
If we're actually if the standard is, if we think the standard is the definition of flagrant act, something that could cause harm, even if he jumped up, we don't know what happened inside. I would say if you think it's a flagrant foul, whether the kid pops up or not, I don't think injury is the determining factor, to be honest. A lot of kids get injured on standard hits, and coaches think there should be a foul because their kid gets injured, obviously. But I personally don't think that should make a difference in whether it's flagrant or not.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I just know that a lot of times when a kid's down, the coach is normally looking for a flag, even if
Oh,
it
yeah.
was a legal hit. So,
Yep, absolutely. Definition of fighting. Um, there it is. It's a strike with hand, leg, foot, feet, arm, whether or not there's contact, taking a swing. What we consider not to be fighting. The kid's using a form to break a hold during a live ball action. And we're going to watch a couple of videos here, and you'll see some are right on the border, and there's probably an argument to be made. I think our standard is that we treat fighting as a dead ball foul versus a live ball foul. And we consider that football action when the play is in progress. So like using a form to break a hold on a live ball, looks like a swing. It is a swing to get loose. Using the leg to stop attack from twisting your ankle. Using elbows to escape from a prolonged pin to the ground. And using the hands and arms to fend off punches. So if a kid's defending himself because he's being attacked, this is during dead ball play, obviously. We got to be careful that we don't tag that player with fighting as well. So we got to pay attention when we see action going on. Is one the aggressor and one kid literally just trying to defend himself or protect himself, I should say. That's not shouldn't be considered fighting on that particular player's part.
or question around, striking or fighting. Does it matter if it's open-handed or closed fist? Does that make a difference?
I think I mean, there's a specific rule for slapping. It's illegal to, in a 15-yard penalty, to slap an opponent, slap a blocker's helmet. It doesn't specifically say open hand, but it does say slap. I guess it does say with the hand. Striking with the fist. This is probably one of those things that's up for debate. You'll see again in one of the videos, you'll probably have a lot of opinions on both sides of that, whether during live action that would be considered a fight. I would just say though, when you look at the actual definition of the term fighting, we have, to me, it supports the idea, the notion that it should be considered a dead ball activity that we would call fighting. And I'll just point to some of the rules like tripping. You're using your leg to strike at an opponent, but it's actually during a play, so we don't call it fighting. If a kid sticks his leg out to trip somebody, he's striking with the leg. Blindside block, if you lead with your forearm, you're striking an opponent with your forearms. We're not calling that fighting because it's a live ball act, which we consider a football act. But I know there's debate on that. I know there's opinions on both sides of that question. So this is from the mechanics manual. No one is disqualified from a game without consultation with the referee. So if you throw a flag on a kid for an unsporting conduct or a flagrant foul or a second foul, unsporting foul, you go to the referee and let the referee know what you have. Let the referee make the notifications to the sidelines. Don't run a kid off and tell the coach this player's gone. It's important to have those discussions just to make sure of a couple of things. Make sure that what you had was what you thought you had. Make sure you're not saying this is a second unsporting foul when in fact the 15-yard flag you threw on that player in the second quarter was actually a personal foul. I think it's good as a referee myself, make sure you know what the official actually saw or what the official actually heard. Just make sure you have a good discussion on that. It's not a small thing to disqualify somebody from a football game. The matter should definitely be discussed between all the officials who witnessed the incident, and hopefully there's more than one. If it's something like a fight or if someone said something, hopefully two heard it, because that just adds weight to the flag. And you've got to make sure you have the correct jersey number. Sometimes if a fight flares up, punches flew right away, you may miss a little bit of it. Kids are going to disperse right away so they don't get caught. If you don't have the correct jersey number, you cannot legitimately disqualify a player. If you're guessing, you just flat out can't do it. And as we know, there's video everywhere right now. And I think it was in the last year, or maybe both last year and the year before, there's been a ejection. And when the video came out, it was clear the wrong player. We really lose a lot of credibility with that. So just be careful about that. If you don't have a number, you don't have a number, and you can't just throw a number out there. and throw a kid out of a football game and the next game.
So Craig, on big hits, and let's just say only one official saw the hit, he reports it to the referee and says, you know, that was objectionable or worth a disqualification. Do you need some type of consensus on the field between officials to agree that it was, you know, flagrant and worthy of a DQ, or is, you know, one official saying, I saw it, had eyes on it, that's ejection worthy?
You know what? I think that's if no one else saw it, I don't know how you could have consensus. I mean, again, it'd just be guessing on their part too. I think it seems like we've had this kind of discussion in the past about these type of things too. And I think what it goes down to, the reputation of the officials. You have a good judgment in the past on things like that. Yeah, I think there's probably an internal dynamic there that's got to be in place. But I think the important thing is having that discussion with the referee, being very detailed about what you saw, and the referee agrees that qualifies as a disqualifying act. The referee makes that decision ultimately.
Yeah, and Scott Lewis is just pointing out that even if only one person actually saw it, there should be at least a discussion among the other officials to just talk it through.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yep. I mean, the more discussion you have, the more deliberation you put into it, the more credibility there's going to be, I think, overall for the act of disqualification. It doesn't look too hasty. It never should. Don't try to break up fights. You probably get punched in the face if it's a real barn burner. No need to get between fighting players. You pull a player's arms back, you know, you subject him to getting punched, although he's wearing his helmet and it's going to hurt the other guy too. But my point is, there's no reason for us to be getting in physical contact with football players. Let coaches get their players. A coach can come on the field during a fight as long as they're going to pull their players out and prevent their players from coming on, not to go out and touch or yell at opposing team players. Here's the big thing: take down numbers. And God bless the Pueblo officials last year when they had South and East going at it. How important it was to try to get numbers from people pouring onto the field and from people actually engaging in the fighting. That's a big task. So officials can't get buried in the middle. Step back and pull out your pencil and paper and start writing down numbers of people that you see physically involved in the act and leaving the bench area and coming onto the football field. Those are the numbers we need to get. It's sometimes hard to get names after chaos like that. If you have especially a large number of kids, but the best you can too. And I know we have other means of finding out the names, but recording those numbers is pretty important in a fight. And thank God they're not all as big as that one in Pueblo was last year.
So in those bench clearings, it might be easier just to write down who's on the sideline still, right?
And I think if I'm correct, that was the case for South last year. It's probably easier to see who's left, if I recall. Fighting versus blows. Here's where, we'll show a couple of videos and let you see what some of these look like.
And Craig, just a quick time check. We're at about 13 minutes left for the meeting.
All right,
so.
I'll just show a couple of these. Look over here.
So we're still seeing the PowerPoint. We're not actually seeing the video if you're playing it.
I am. Let's see. I
don't know if you have multiple monitors up. It may not be picking the correct monitor.
On this.
Yeah, we just got the gray screen now, Craig.
Let's see.
While you're sorting that out, just a quick question that came in: where do you go to take the test? You take both tests, both the rules test and the mechanics test in Arbiter. So you'll want to make sure that you know where to go in Arbiter, and I believe there's multiple ways to get there. So if you need to take the test, check with your area director. They'll direct you to the right location.
And you know what, Joel? I think we'll just move on. I had about 4 videos and I'm not able to get that shared at all at this point. So
All right.
time.
Big George is up. All right, George, we got your presentation.
Okay, I'm just going to say a few words about blindside blocks and try to make this foul as simple as possible. So there's really only 2 elements to a blindside block. The first is the view that the player that is being blocked had. Was he able to see the block coming? And secondly, it's the nature of the contact on the player. So those are the 2 things that we have to understand before we call a foul. So as far as the view goes, as I said, could the blockee see the blocker's approach? And we have to ignore the last millisecond or so because he's going to see the hit at the last second. Okay, so that's the first judgment we have to make. The second aspect to that judgment is we have to be able to identify the angle that the blocker took to the player. That will help us decide whether the player blocked was able to see the block coming. If it's a block in the back, he probably had no chance of seeing the block. So if it qualifies as a blindside block because of the contact, then we shouldn't worry about the block in the back. There's actually both fouls there, but the blindside block supersedes it, so we would go with the blindside block. If the block is from the side, it could end up being a legal block, but it could also be a blindside block. So that's the one that requires the most judgment. And if the block is from the front, then almost certainly he was able to see the player approaching him. It's not always true, because if the player that gets hit is almost always going to be on defense, and he's trying to get to the runner, so his focus is on the runner, and it could be very well that somebody comes and hits him directly from the front and he doesn't see it. But if the block is from the front, then the benefit of the doubt goes to the blocker. Okay, the contact. First of all, for it to be a blindside block, we have to have forcible contact. So if he doesn't knock him down, I would say that excludes forcible contact 99% of the time. There are no absolutes here. Okay, if he does knock him down, which that's the kind of blocks that we want to prevent and penalize when they happen, then we almost certainly have a blindside block, but we can have very significant contact if the hands are used. And that is legal. So that kind of goes back to the question that was asked earlier about how do we judge things when the player gets hurt or doesn't get hurt. As Craig said, that's not a factor, okay? You can legally put a very big hit on somebody, and we can't write perfect rules all the time. We don't like to see it happen, obviously, but that's part of the game. Okay, and then we also have to watch for other fouls when we get into the blindside block focus, and I'm specifically talking about targeting. So here is our checklist. Was the approach seen? Was the contact forcible? And did the blocker use his hands? If you can just institutionalize that checklist in your mind and go through that before you flag for a blindside block, you should be in good shape. I'm going to show one quick video, and this video demonstrates a legal block that is forcible contact and qualifies as a big hit, but it's legal because he used his hands.
George, any way to go full screen on that video?
I don't have the icon to do that. Okay, so that's an example of a very forcible legal block. How much time do we have left?
About 6 minutes.
Yeah, that's not enough. My remaining video is 10 minutes. I'd rather use the time to answer any questions on any of the topics. And we will pick up on the next meeting with Craig's videos on the blow versus the punch, because that is something that we've had great controversy with over the years. So I'd like everybody to see those videos. So we'll include that to start off, and then we'll probably work in my blindside video, because it's a very good tutorial on how to analyze it. So let's end the lecture part there and deal with questions.
So, George, there was a question that came up back when Kirk was presenting about helping the runner. And if you could give a little bit more clarity around, you know, if that foul actually occurs behind the line of scrimmage. So, you know, quarterback sneak, running back goes up, contacts the quarterback, and like the videos Kirk was showing, but that contact happens behind line of scrimmage versus maybe they get a yard ahead of the line of scrimmage and then that contact occurs. So could you walk through previous spot foul, succeeding spot foul, those kind of things, asking for some clarity around that?
If the foul is by the offense behind the line of scrimmage, then the penalty is going to be enforced from the previous spot, unless it is illegal kicking or illegal batting. So that's different than the way we would have penalized it before, when the all but one principle was the dominant factor. So if he helps him behind the line of scrimmage, it's going to be 5 yards from the previous spot. And I know I tried to give a lot of rules of thumb in the master clinic, but one simple way to remember this type of stuff is if the foul is by the offense and either the foul or the run ends behind the line, then we're going to enforce it from the previous spot. It makes that table 10-4 very simple if you look at that as the common denominator. Fouls by the offense, if either the foul or the run ends behind the line, its previous spot. Speaking of Kirk's presentation, I'd like to add one thing, the lifting. If the runner has to be lifted, that is almost a surefire indicator that his progress was stopped. Just the act of his own teammate grabbing him like that is pretty much an indicator that the progress was stopped. And we want to distinguish between forward progress stops and rocket assists. The rocket assists are fouls. The forward progress stops are the end of the play.
All right. We are almost at time. Just two quick questions to follow up on previous topics from the night. So one, coach disqualifications, any way for us to prevent them from going up to the box and watching the rest of the game, from the box? We're supposed to be watching the field, right? So I don't know that we need to police the coach off the field, but is there anything we can do about that?
No, we do not need to police that. That's outside our purview. The coaches should know that he's not supposed to do that. And if the other team's coaches who are also up in the press box, or there's a neutral observer sees him up there, that's just going to extend his suspension. Okay. So we don't need to worry about that one. And what I described actually happened. The coach went up there and was spotted up there by someone who informed Chesa, and the coach got an additional suspension.
All right. Last question, just from previous topic, was statisticians, soccer moms that are taking pictures for the team and that kind of stuff, or I say football moms, right? If they get in the way or we have contact with them, is the head coach responsible for that? Or, how do we handle those non-player but kind of peripheral people on the field?
Okay, you actually gave the key to the answer in the way you described the question. If we can hold the coach accountable for the person's actions, then a foul would be appropriate. If the person is out of the reasonable control of the coach, just get the person removed from the premises. So if it's a mother with a camera or an uncle with a camera, just have the game administrator get them off the field. The statistician works directly for the coach, and we have had fouls called on statisticians. So that is considered, the statistician is in fact has the status of an assistant coach, and the coach is expected to control him, but we cannot expect the coach to control parents with cameras or media personnel with cameras.
Gotcha. So I think that's all the questions that came in, George. We are at time, and Scott Lewis has done a good job of fielding a lot of questions that came in the chat window. So I think we're good for this evening.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks to everyone.
Yep. Good luck in the season. Thanks, everybody. Good night.